friends, it's Lisa. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are creating this mixed media journal page. I decided I wanted to do more than just cards because while I love making cards, sometimes I don't need as many cards as I make, and sometimes you want to make something a little bit bigger on a bigger scale. So I decided to try mixed media journaling. Here I'm going to start with some heavy gesso through the stencil. So I'm using the Dilutions journal. It's the largest one. And I haven't done anything to the paper up to this point. So this is the first mark I'm making on this paper. I had meant for this mark just to be white because I was going to get the kind of cream color as the base, the color of the paper, and then have the stark white of the gesso be the next layer. Apparently I had green on this stencil that I didn't realize or hadn't cleaned off very well, so that transferred into my pure white gesso. I was a little worried at this point, but I decided I'd push through, and I went to add this layer of just the white gesso over top because I wanted to get rid of the green but keep the texture, and I thought this might be the way to do that. I never fully got rid of the green, but once I dulled it back with this top coat of white, I actually liked it. So there's that. But I did want to make sure that I didn't create the same issue with this stencil. So I cleaned it off, and you can see it did have some yellow on it, so it was a good thing that I cleaned it off. And I put some pixie spray on the back of that and then sticking that down. I wanted to have this stencil as the background or the main part. I was planning on having a whole little section with a focal point, but I end up not doing that because I liked this background so much. So instead of coloring through the stencil, because that would have been hard trying to color on top of the paint, I put down this watercolor ground, and this is the first time I've ever actually used it, so I wasn't sure what was going to happen. But I wanted to be able to watercolor, so I'm taking my Pinkfresh Studio watercolors, and I have the very first iteration of those. So I've had those for a while. Here is a chart I made. At the end, I'll link up a video I made about these a long time ago. I haven't used them in a couple of months, I'm going to be honest. And so two of them, this red and the blue, I got, I guess in the suction-y part, got too dry, so I had to clean it out. But it wasn't too hard. The one part I don't like about these watercolors is they're really hard to get the top off. It's like a child safety lid, and I have such trouble. So the first color I'm going to do is this salmon color. Now I didn't have this color exactly, so I'm mixing it. Mixing colors seems scary, but it's really not. It's really simple. So I just took this little plastic cup. I think it's the same size as like a shot glass or one of those Dixie cups that I used when I was little. And I'm just putting a drop or two of color. So the first one, I did a larger drop of red, a little bit of orange, and a little bit of pink, and then I sprayed it with water. Then I just tested out on some watercolor cardstock to make sure it's actually the color that I want. On some of them, I got them on the first try. Like these first two, boom, I was done. But I do have to go back and fiddle with some of the colors. I think that sometimes, for me, this is a problem where I think I need every single color and then I just use those colors. But really, you can mix and match colors and get the color that you really want. So I was doing this challenge for the Pinkfresh Studios where they do a monthly challenge and they give you like some colors to use and you make a project with those. So that's where I'm getting these colors. And you'll see I have the little sheet. I printed it out so I know. And for the January challenge, you could use any of the the prior year's colors. So I ended up, I think it's the July. I could be wrong, but I point to it a few times here. And I wanted to use those colors. I liked the soft, kind of muted palette. So for this green, it's just too bright. It's a beautiful green. I love the vibrant green, but it doesn't match their swatch. And so it was the right tone, but it wasn't muted enough. So what I went and did, instead of putting black in, I put just a little bit of red, which mutes the color down. It doesn't make the color darker, it just mutes it, which is interesting. You just are going to want to use the opposite color on the color wheel. So for green, that's red. I did the exact same thing on this yellow. I put just a drop of purple, then added the yellow, added the water, and got it to the more muted color that I was looking for. It's still a hair above the swatch, but it's watercolor, so as it dries back, it will definitely dry back into the color that swatch is. So here I'm just painting over that watercolor ground. It was interesting. It doesn't grab and hold the watercolor as well as your watercolor paper is going to do. So if you've never used the watercolor grounds like me, it's definitely a learning experience. I want to use these again. I got the white and I got the transparent, so I'm excited to try the transparent at some time. But it's a different experience than I was expecting. And you can see with the yellow and the red that when you drop the darker color in, when you're trying to do a wet onto wet, you need much less of the darker color than you do when you when you're doing the same thing on watercolor paper. So I blotched up a little bit of the colors with my baby wipe because they were getting a little more intense than I wanted, and I really liked the more muted colors. So I blotched it up, and then I'll go back and add a little bit of color. But here I'm adding the green in. Oh, also, I wanted to mention, you can see on the right that I have a little color palette that I have kind of created for myself on the top of that card. And I'm just going to take that and add it into my catalog because it's definitely a color palette I could use in the future with these liquid watercolors or with other colors. So when you find a color palette that you've used that you like, just create an extra little thing and keep it, so next time you're having a really hard time deciding what colors to use, you can pull that out and be like, oh yeah, I can use this. So hopefully that's a helpful hint for some of y'all, because it's definitely been helpful for me. So I waited for those to dry, and then I've added a little bit deeper of the blue. Now I'm going in with the Distress Microglaze, and then on top of that I'm going to use the Distress Collage Medium. I do use the crazing, but then I heat dry it so you don't actually get any crazing. If you want the actual crazing, you have to be a little bit more patient because I was not. I was like, I want to get this done, so I heated it. But here I'm just taking the micro glaze, and the reason I'm doing this is because the liquid watercolors are water-based, and the Distress Collage is water-based. So if I use the Distress Collage right over the top of that watercolor, it would reactivate that and spread the colors. And I didn't want that. I really liked what I had. So this Distress Microglaze is basically stopping. It's like a little layer of saran wrap or something. It's stopping the two different mediums from touching, which is really nice. You do want to buff off. You don't want to have any extra microglaze. The microglaze kind of, you only need the slightest bit of it. And so you put it down and then you buff it off just so that you don't get it too slick. If you have too much microglaze and then you put this Distress Collage on top, as soon as you touch it, it's gonna like move, which you don't want. So I've done this one or two times in the past, and I think it's such a great hack if you're doing any kind of mixed media and if you really like the layer that you have and you don't want to touch it, you don't want anything to happen, then putting a layer that Distress Microglaze is definitely the way to go. Now I've added the next layer on top of the microglaze. So I've added the Crazing Distress Collage Medium. Distress Collage Medium. Yeah, that's what it's called. And I'm heat drying that, like I said earlier, so I'm not going to actually get any crazing. I think it would have looked even cooler if I hadn't have done that, but I was really excited to continue working on it. So you can see that there was a time shift there. What I did is, once that Distress Collage Medium was dry, I took my Pitt pens and have added a little bit of color on top, because I took Kathy Rakusen's online coloring road trip class from the online card classes, and she really talked about and said you need to add some depth and dimension. So I tried coloring with my colored pencil to give a little bit of depth and dimension, and that was before I put the microglaze on. But about 2 strokes in, I realized that just wasn't going to work. It doesn't work on top of the watercolor grounds. So that's why I added the microglaze and then the collage medium, so I could add my Pitt pens, because when you put them on, you can move them around with your finger, like I'm doing here, and then once it's dry, it doesn't move. Like, you don't reconstitute it. Even if you put more marker over the top, it just layers the color. The color is translucent, so it takes 2 or 3 layers of the color to actually build it up. But that's how I got those darker areas. I think I went a little bit crazy on the yellow flowers. I think I should have maybe not used red as the darkened color, maybe used a brown. But what can you do? It's a little bit more red than I'd planned, but I also think it turned out really, really cute. So next, I wanted to put on a piece of scripture. So I am stamping with these tiny little letter stamps, and I am not worried about getting everything perfect. You can see I tried to stamp those on the actual paper, but I couldn't get it where I got a good impression because the paper's slick at this point, right? So instead, I'm stamping it on some, I don't even know what kind of paper this is because it's just in my extra little box of scrap paper. I'm going through and cataloging all of my stamps and dies, so I have a whole paper of just white and black and tan scraps, and I just grabbed some out of there and stamped each line. And then I'm taking this Distress ink, and I believe it's Victorian Velvet, and I'm just adding some of that on. I was not going for a perfect blend. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was just going for getting some color down. So you'll see it definitely has some variety of color, but I actually think that really adds a lot to it. So I'm gluing that down. I'm not gonna, this isn't the Distress Microglaze. This is actually a bookbinding glue, which I've been using and have really enjoyed. So I'll add that to a video upcoming because I've been trying it out before I let you guys know about it, and I definitely really like it, and it's at a really reasonable price range. So I'll add that. But I didn't collage these on because this was the top layer. So instead I just cut out little strips and am gluing those down. I didn't worry about getting perfect rectangles, perfect squares or anything like that. I just cut it out, and I think it looks really beautiful. I really love this part about art journaling is it doesn't have to be perfect. It's more free flowy. So I'm excited about how that turned out. I'm excited to do another one. So you will see that upcoming. I haven't started, but I'm excited. I'm going to use the same color palette so that I can display this at some point, right? Put it up on my little wall and display the page, and it'll look cute. So anyway, thanks so much for joining. I had such a fun time with y'all today. If you're interested, please subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Love to have you guys come back. And here's some other videos you might be interested in, so you can go ahead and check those out. Have a super awesome, amazing, wonderful day, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.